Would you pray with me? God, who travels with us always, be with us here and now, and be in our words, and be in our thoughts, and be in our spirits. Amen. I don't think I've ever really told the story of how I ended up working here at First Plymouth. It was the winter of 2006 and 2007, and we'd already decided to move to Denver the next summer so I could start a PhD program. So I was looking for a job. At the time, I was newly ordained, and I was finishing up my 5th year working at a United Methodist church in North Carolina. And those 5 years of being in the church world had already taught me a lot about what I was looking for in a church, what I was looking for in a job, and also what I was looking to avoid. Not knowing anything about Colorado or literally anyone who lived here, I started scouring all the job listings for churches and nonprofits in town. I can't remember everywhere I applied because it was so long ago, but I remember I got phone interviews with 3 or 4 churches, and then we flew out one March week when the weather was a lot like it is today, and I interviewed again at some of those churches and at a summer camp up in the mountains near Allens Park, and at a nonprofit in Denver, and I got a few job offers from that visit, but I remember I kept putting off responding to those offers because none of them felt quite right. Then one day, I saw a listing for a job at this church. The job was Youth and Young Adults Director, which was not a job I'd ever done before, but I applied anyway. And while I was waiting to hear back, I scoured every pixel of this church's website. The website was primitive then compared to what it's like now because it was nearly 20 years ago, but there was still a lot of information on there. In particular, at that time, there was a weekly newsletter, and every single copy of the newsletter was archived on the church website. So I went through months and months of newsletters, reading the little column from the senior minister, noticing what kinds of groups were meeting and how often, paying attention to what kinds of programming was going on, and trying to figure out what a yacht and donut club could possibly be. I didn't figure that out till I got here. I remember there was an announcement in one of those newsletters that the endowment or the foundation, I can't remember which one, had given a grant of $25,000 to finance repairs to the parking lot, in case you think capital needs are a new thing. I remember squinting at grainy pictures in black and white of vacation Bible schools and youth activities and trying to get a feel for the life of this congregation. And I remember getting the sense, the longer I looked at all those newsletters and everything they represented, I remember getting the sense that this was a place I wanted to be. Why did I feel that way? It was because by then I had spent enough time in the church world to know what to look for. I didn't know enough about this community to make sense of all the details, but I noticed that there was a consistent concern for a place called the Denver Inner City Parish. I saw that there were calls for volunteers and donations for a Habitat for Humanity house build, and that this church was a major part of helping people find affordable places to live. I knew that this church had created a partnership with a community in Rwanda, and that they were working to send not only money, but also people from First Plymouth to Rwanda to build relationships. I knew there was a community garden. The youth group had just traveled down to Colorado Springs to protest outside of Focus on the Family. I could tell, in other words, I could tell that this was a big church full of people and full of energy. But I could also tell that this was no high and mighty big steeple place where people were afraid to get their hands dirty. I could tell, even just by reading the newsletters, that this community was interested in justice, that this community was interested in relationship, that this community was interested in ministry. I could tell that this community preferred to face outward rather than inward. So I did something foolish, and I turned down the offers from the other churches even before I had my final interview here because I knew that I wanted to be at a place like this. This story from 1 Samuel, it's a strange one, isn't it? God sent Samuel to this small town, to Bethlehem, and to this one family, to the family of a man named Jesse. And God told Samuel that the next king of Israel was going to be one of Jesse's kids. And Jesse had a lot of kids, as it turns out. So it turned into like a police lineup, or maybe one of those dating shows where they present someone with 3 dating options and they have to choose one of them right there on the spot. The first contestant was Jesse's oldest son, Eliab, and Eliab was apparently very tall and very handsome because Samuel right away thought, yes, that's the one. That has to be the king on account of all his tallness and all of his handsomeness. But no, it wasn't Eliab. And so then the next oldest brother paraded by, but Abinadab wasn't going to be the king either, and it wasn't Shammah either, or any of their 4 younger brothers. And so they kept going with this dating game until Jesse ran out of sons. And then Samuel looked at Jesse and said, is this all you've got? And Jesse said, well, now that you mention it, there is one more son, but you wouldn't be interested in him because he's just a shepherd. He's so young and unimportant that we didn't even invite him here today. We just sent him out there to take care of the sheep. But Samuel said, call him in and let's see if he's the one God sent me to find. So Jesse sent for his youngest son, David, the shepherd boy. And sure enough, Samuel heard God saying that David was the one, and Samuel anointed David as king of Israel right there on the spot. And that is a strange way to choose a king. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure it's any worse than the Electoral College. We could try it. I don't know. There's this bias in the church world. There's this pervasive assumption among church people that bigger is better, and that more money is better, and that vitality can be measured with statistics. It's the first question often that someone asks about a church. How many members? How many do you have in worship on Sundays? What is the budget? How many clergy are there on the staff? We ask about these metrics because we think that they tell us something about success and faithfulness. We ask about attendance and budgets because we have been trained by our capitalistic world to understand vitality in terms of numbers and to understand mission in terms of growth. I think as Samuel and Jesse stood there that day ready to anoint a king, I think that's what they had shown up assuming was true. And that's what they had shown up expecting. They had shown up assuming that leadership had to do with metrics like birth order or handsome faces or a tall stature. They had shown up expecting that leadership was all about being high and mighty and looking the part, but God quickly put a stop to all that. In this story, God quickly let it be known that vitality and potential and success had very little to do with anything outward. Certainly very little to do with outward appearances. And that instead, God was looking for the things that from the outside look lowly and unimportant. It turns out that God does not measure either potential or success by the same standards as this world. I bring all this up today because this church is on a little bit of a roll. This church is on a little bit of a roll, and it feels good to be on a little bit of a roll. Amen? Amen. Because it's been a rough stretch these last half dozen years. Amen? Amen. We have a solid and steady ministerial staff, if I do say so myself. We are on the verge of signing a lease on the downstairs classroom space that will substantially close the gap in our finances for the next 10 years. We had an amazing anonymous donation of over $1 million and another follow-up donation of tens of thousands of dollars that together show how much people believe in this church's ministry right now. We have a new to us 9-foot Steinway making its debut on Easter. We had a strong new member class last fall. It's looking like another strong one this spring. And yes, attendance is up, giving is up, our numbers are up, the metrics are good. We are on a roll. For the first time ever, I think I find myself saying more than once that I'm excited for stewardship season because I think it's gonna go really well, y'all. And the danger in a moment like this one comes when we confuse the meaning of all this success. The danger comes when we confuse a healthy budget with divine approval. The danger comes when we think that somehow full seats make us God's favorites. The danger comes when churches let the maintenance and growth of an institution become the main form of faithfulness, when we think that being on a roll means that the work is done. The maintenance and growth of an institution is never the main form of faithfulness. Ministry is the main form of faithfulness. Welcoming God's people is the main form of faithfulness. Doing all the good and doing all the justice we can do in this world is the main form of faithfulness. Responding to God's call to be beloved community is the main form of faithfulness. We should always do our best to be responsible and active stewards of this church and its resources, but we should do that so that we can preserve and expand our capacity to carry out ministry. We should be good stewards because it helps us pursue the things God has sent us here to do. It feels good to be on a roll, but big budgets and fancy buildings and full sanctuaries are in and of themselves not signs of success, and they are not the best evidence of faithfulness. Whole swaths of Christianity that take that logic, whole segments of Christianity have bought into that bigger is better mindset. But I don't think that's what we are called here to do. I don't think that's why most of us are here. It's not why I'm here. I didn't look through all those newsletters on the website 19 years ago and say, I want to be a part of a church with a really tall steeple, or I need to be somewhere with worship attendance over 300. I was looking for heart. I wanted to be a part of a church that was doing the hard work of becoming open and affirming. I wanted to be a part of a community that was making real commitment to creation justice. I wanted to be among people who wrestled together about how God was asking them to serve their neighbors. And when I talk to all of you, when I ask all of you about why you are a part of this community, never once has anyone told me that they're here because of the substantial endowment. Nobody has ever said it's because of all the square footage in this building. It's not what I've heard you say. I've heard you talk about heart. I've heard you talk about what it feels like to belong so fully to a community that respects you and loves you and gives you room to ask your questions and gives you permission to get your hands dirty. I have heard you all tell me that you are here because you believe so strongly that this world needs communities like this one right now. So many of you have told me that you are looking for a place where you can make a difference. So many of you have told me that you are here because you need a place that cares for you so that you can care for others and in some small way make the world a more just and beautiful and life-giving and safe place for all God's people and for all God's creation. I don't think too many of us are here for the outward appearances. I don't think that most of us choose this community because of the metrics. We are here because of heart. We are here because we feel like we belong here, and we are here because we feel like here is where we can make a difference. And we can, and we do, and we will. We will make a difference, which really is the reason to keep working on all those metrics, not for the sake of the metrics themselves, but so that this community can keep doing good work, so that this community can keep doing God's work long after all of us are gone. 19 years ago, I turned down a few other job offers because I knew this was the kind of place I wanted to be, because I knew you were the kind of people I wanted to be with. And even on hard days, I've always felt that way. Even when this church was not the tallest or the oldest or the handsomest, or even when our budgets were shaky or our parking lot was potholed and our meetings were contentious, I've never stopped feeling like this community is called by God to be a presence for good and a presence for justice in this world. And I think a lot of us feel that way. I've heard a lot of you say that you're here because you feel called to this community, and you're here because you feel embraced by this community and cared for by this community. We are here because we sense, we are here because we recognize that whatever the metrics might say, whatever the outward appearances might be, the true power to do good lies in the small things. The true capacity for change can be found nestled in relationship and community. The real potential to make the world a better place comes when people gather with goodwill and with common purpose. It's a small thing, and it's often invisible, and it's not always what the world chooses. But I do think it is always what the world needs, maybe now more than ever. The world needs heart. So I'm glad that we are here together making that community and finding that heart, and that we are here together doing that work. And I am glad that we are here together, that on that ensuring that on that metric, more than any other metric, we are going to stay on a roll. Amen.